Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we will get started in the next couple of minutes. We will wait for other devotees to join as well. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So at the outset, I would like to express my heartfelt concern and prayers to those who are affected by this COVID-19. And we would continue to urge you to follow the regulations and guidelines given by your local authorities and by your government for your personal safety as well as for the safety of the public. So I would like to mention that right off the bat. And on that note, I would like to humbly welcome each one of you to this virtual class that is hosted by ISKCON Toronto. So usually all of you are used to physically coming to the temple, but we are in these unprecedented times where we have to do this virtually. When we say unprecedented, the true magnitude of that is mind-boggling because almost the entire population, 8 billion people, are impacted by this COVID-19. Some of them emotionally, some of them, financially, or most of us financially. Some of them affected because of their health, emotionally, spiritually. So in some form or another, all of us are impacted. All of us are fearful as well, and there is so much of uncertainty and anxiety because of the current COVID-19 situation. And it is prophesied in our scripture, um, in Srimad-Bhagavatam, especially in the 14th chapter of the 10th Canto, which is one of the most often quoted verses by Srila Prabhupada. Samashitaye padapallava plavam mahat padam punye so murare bhavambudir vatsa padam param padam yat vipadamnate sam. So the last line especially, padam yat vipadamnate sam. So it is prophesied that in this material world there is danger in every step. So every step there is danger. So our ultimate aim is to go back home, back to Godhead, where there is no anxiety. But here there is, every step there is danger. Actually, sparsham is a word in Sanskrit. It means touch. So in a way, this COVID-19, it means that every touch there is danger. Sparsham yat vipadamnate sam. So it is already prophesied. And during these challenging times, it's natural for human beings to go to places of worship. Everybody goes to temples or churches for for solace and comfort. And it is also unprecedented. Now people cannot, or devotees cannot even go to the temples or churches. A case in point, today is Easter. Easter commemorates the resurrection of Jesus Christ following his crucifixion. Um, this morning we were seeing some video clips from Vatican City. There was nobody because nobody's allowed to go inside St. Peter's Basilica or Cathedral. So just the Pope is giving that, and everything is taking place online. So it's very unprecedented what is going on right now. But all of us are going through different forms of adversities right now, and our faith is that adversities are stepping stones for us to go towards Lord Krishna, and setbacks are setups for us to be victorious and go to Lord Krishna. And our continued faith is that God knows the end from the beginning. So this is something that all of us as devotees know. God knows the end from the beginning. So we may be able to count the number of seeds in an apple, but only God can count the number of apples in a seed, because He knows how many trees it's going to become in the forest as well. And we do what we can. That's most important. We do what we can in times like this, and God will do what we cannot. So again, my name is Ananda Gauranga Das, and I came to know more about Srila Prabhupada's books in the year 2000 when a devotee came to the apartment where I was living, and he distributed books. And his name is Gauri Chandar Prabhu, and he's doing that today as well. So you can see he's been doing that at least for 20 years that I know, and he may have been doing that much earlier as well. So because of the books that he had distributed, we get to learn more about Krishna, and we are eternally grateful to book distributors as well as to ISKCON founder Acharya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada for us to know about Krishna. If Prabhupada did not come to the West, we would not know about any of the Vedic scriptures, or at least some of us. So we are very, very grateful. And today's topic is working from home, a spiritual perspective. So that's the topic that we have chosen. And in troubled times like this, as we just heard, we will do what we can, and God will do what we cannot. So towards the end of Bhagavad Gita, in the 18th chapter, there is a fascinating verse, 58th verse, 18.58, where Lord Krishna teaches us, Matticha sarva durgani, mat prasada tarishyasi. In that particular verse, Lord Krishna says, if you become conscious of Him, we'll be able to cross over all the hurdles of this material life. So Lord Krishna does not promise that there will be no hurdles. He said you'll be able to cross over. So if you can think of it like there is a sea with a lot of sharks and piranhas, but if you're going in a beautiful ship, then you're able to cross over without any problem. There could be a forest full of wild animals and snakes, but if you're able to go on an helicopter right over that, you're able to cross all the hurdles. So in this time when we are working from home, especially, I understand some of our devotees are working very hard. They're sacrificing not just their time but also their life, literally, because they work in the healthcare field, and they are helping everybody. But majority of us are working from home, and that's why this topic, which is titled as Working from Home, a Spiritual Perspective. So we will get to know more about that. And also there is one verse, so I just mentioned about 18.58, that's something that we need to memorize, especially during these times when we are working from home. It's worth taking a printout of this from vedabase.io, which is a website that is available for all of us. If we don't have a book at home, we can go to Bhagavad Gita chapter 18, take 58th verse, Machitta Sarva Durgani verse, take a printout of that. That gives us so much of confidence during these troubling times. And another verse is from Chaitanya Charitamrita. It says, Katanchana Smrite Yasmin Dushkaram Sukaram Bhavat. So in that particular verse it is said, if we just remember Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even the most difficult thing becomes very easy to execute. But on the flip side, if we don't remember Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even the easy thing becomes very difficult to execute. Just like the coin has two sides, right? It's either one of them. Same thing in this 18.58, Krishna says, if you become conscious of me, you'll be able to cross over all the hurdles of material life, including this in this COVID-19. So if you don't become conscious, then we'll be, in trouble. So with that in mind, on this topic of working from home, spiritual perspective, I would like to start off with three aspects from the scriptures which we need to keep in mind. But first thing, what we have to understand is that from the scriptures, we know that this material world is temporary. So anything in this material world is temporary, which means, we still follow absolutely whatever the authorities and the government regulations and instructions are mentioned to us that we need, or that we are mandated to follow. Social distancing, washing the hands with warm water, soap, etc. We do that. But eventually, from the scriptures, we have to understand that anything in this material world is temporary, which means no, it's not permanent. Nothing is permanent. So with that in mind, we can conclude that only thing that is constant is the change. So I'd like to repeat that. The only thing that is constant in this material world is the change. And Lord Krishna teaches us in this wonderful verse in Bhagavad Gita 2.14. The English translation is as follows. So the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and its disappearance in due course of time is similar to the appearance and disappearance of summer and winter months. As we know, summer, winter, cyclically it just goes on and on and on. One changes, another comes, another changes. It goes on and on. Like that, Krishna is explaining that this happiness and distress. Now, all of us are going through distress because of this COVID-19. So much of uncertainty, whether there's going to be work or not, etc., etc. So there's so much of uncertainty, and Lord Krishna says we have to learn to tolerate them. So, which is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. So again, the spiritual perspective of coping with this COVID-19 situation is that we have to understand, it gives us some confidence. Everything is temporary, which means the good and the bad is not permanent, it's temporary. So I remember there is a great English poet by the name of Rudyard Kipling. By the way, he's born in Bombay, which is the name of Mumbai. He was born in India, and he said, if you can meet triumph and disaster, okay, if you meet triumph and disaster, and if you are able to treat these two imposters the same way, then we'll be successful. So he's just reverberating the essence of what Lord Krishna is teaching us. So if you meet triumph and disaster, and if you are able to treat these two imposters the same way, then we'll be successful in life. So I'd like to illustrate this with a very small story, beautiful story, because we want to make it generally newcomer friendly. So we just wanted to make sure that there's not heavy philosophy, but things that are easy to follow. So we're talking about the nature of this material world, which is temporary, and the only thing that is constant in this material world is change, which means this virus will also eventually go. We do what we need to do, but eventually this virus will also go. So there was this king who was always surrounded by wise men. For in any situation that this king is in, um, the wise men are there to advise him, and he's able to overcome that situation successfully. But one day the king thought, how long are all of you going to be with me? Every time there could be situations where I may be stuck by myself. So please, all of you come here. I want you to give me one solution that will be helping me in all situation, all circumstances. I want that sort of silver bullet, one stop solution for all the situations that I may be in. Now, all the wise men thought, what is this? How can we think of any situation and come up with some sort of solution? It's practically not possible. And at that time, there was this old wise man from this group of wise men. He wrote something in the paper and he gave it to the king. My dear king, this will be the solution that you're looking for any sort of situation, circumstance, any place that you are in and we are not there. But there is one prerequisite, a condition is that I don't want you to open it and read it. So the king said, no problem, and he put it underneath his, diamond ring, and then he went happily doing his daily routine. Weeks passed, months passed, and one day the enemies all got together, a surprise attack on this king. They took over the kingdom, and the king lost everything, and he was running for his life, literally on a horseback. And when he was going, he was being chased by many other enemies on horseback. And the king went through all these forests and crossed the rivers, etc., on the horseback. And then finally, he went through a small pathway that led to nowhere. He was at the edge of the cliff, and there he is. If he falls down, thousands of meters, and he'll meet death. And he thought, I'm such a proud king. I had so much of kingdom. Everything is lost. What's the point of me living? And when he was about to jump, his diamond ring was shining due to the sunlight. So immediately he looked at it and he remembered, wow, I have this hidden that wise man gave me. Let me see if it works. He opens that and he reads it, and it said, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. So immediately it brought a lot of comfort to him. Then he realized, few days ago I was the greatest king, and that also was temporary. That passed away. And now I have nothing. This too will pass eventually. And at that moment, he was hearing these horses that were coming so close to him. Somehow it went further away. The enemies were looking for him elsewhere. And so much happiness dawned on him. And he went back slowly. I'm fast forwarding it. He gathered all his army again, and his army was so strong. he was able to get back the kingdom. Not only get back the kingdom, but much more than that as well. And at that point in time, he was so happy that he's now the greatest ruler ever, especially for his comeback. So he came back in a way that it was unprecedented, and he was thinking, nobody can beat me. I'm the greatest of all. And at that time, suddenly, his diamond ring again was shining, glittering. And then he was took that paper again. He was thinking that there'll be some other message during happiness. At that time he was under a predicament and he saw the message. So this time he was looking elsewhere. He was turning back, but it's just one message. This too shall pass. So at that time it dawned on him again. Even this success that he's going through now, unprecedented success, the greatest comeback ever as a king, is also not going to be lasting long. So this is a wonderful lesson for us to know that anything in this world is temporary. Success or failure, as Lord Krishna has taught us in 2.14, it's like the summer and winter. One will go, another will come back. And as Rudyard Kipling said, let's treat triumph and despair or defeat, both imposters the same way. And the only thing that is constant in this world is the change, which means from the spiritual perspective, this COVID-19 is also not here to stay permanently. The second spiritual perspective of coping with COVID-19 is again going deeper into the scriptures to know that how mind plays, because we are all staying home, we are working from home, many of us, as we heard. And when we are from home, all we are bombarded is with all these negative things, numbers of people who are affected, numbers of people who are dying. So we have to understand the nature of the mind, because mind always plays the worst case scenario. So it always sort of gravitates towards the negative, and the mind exaggerates. So again, from the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna explains 6.5, Uttaredatmanatmanam atmanam avasadayet atmaivai atmano bandhu atmaiva ripuratmana. They say, with the help of the mind, don't degrade yourself, so the mind is the friend and the enemy of the conditioned soul. And the very next verse, Lord Krishna in 6.6 says, if you're able to control the mind is your best friend. If you have an uncontrolled mind, is your worst enemy. Analogy that is given, every time is knife. Mind is like a knife. It can be used to kill somebody. At the same time, it can be used to take that cancerous growth from somebody, to save some lives as well. But in these times, what we have to be paying attention to our mind is mind exaggerates. Okay, so another analogy that we can think of is this magnifying lens, right? So if you are able to read something, even if the print is very small, with this it makes it very big. So actually the print, the font size is not that big, but this lens makes it so big. So similarly, our mind, even though it is a small problem, we may assume that the whole world is going to end and all of us are going to die. So it's very important that we are able to control the mind in that way, that we understand the nature of the mind is that it will exaggerate more than what it should be. So some of us who are older know about blotting paper. You have a blotting paper and then you pour some ink on top of it. It just expands. The ink expands all over the paper. So mind also does that. Little problem makes it much, 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 much bigger. And you can also think of a sponge. When you take a sponge and then you pour little water, the sponge becomes so big. So mind exaggerates. It gravitates towards the negative, and it always plays the worst case scenario. Just imagine, for those of you who are working from home, again, this the scriptural perspective of that is that spiritual perspective is that your manager doesn't respond back to you, or he doesn't respond to you. Oh my god, I think the job is lost. The mind plays a lot of games. So we have to really catch the mind very early. You may have heard also the term worried to death, right? So this is a real life scenario. What had happened is, for a person, he got locked inside a unplugged freezer. It was a huge freezer the size of this room, and then he somehow got locked inadvertently into the freezer that was unplugged, which means it's not that he's going to freeze to death, but it was cold inside. It's not that it was warm, But then because his mind played the trick, worried to death, he thought that he's going to freeze to death, even though it was cold, a little cold there, but it was not getting colder and colder, and it was not like minus 50. And in the morning, they found him to be dead there, even though it was an unplugged freezer, and because he tried his level best to get out. So we got to really, be careful about the mind again. Spiritual perspective of coping with the situation when we are working from home. Watch out for your mind, because the nature is it'll exaggerate, it'll gravitate towards the negative, and it'll always play a worst case scenario. So another beautiful small story. So, an old gentleman, he went to a doctor, and when he went to the doctor, he said, "My dear doctor, my whole body is so painful, so painful." So the doctor said, "Can you show me where it pains?" So he touched his right ear. He said, "Ah, it's paining." Then the doctor said, "Is your eyes paining? Can you touch and show me?" Then he touched his side. "Ah, the eyes is paining." "Okay, what about your forehead?" "Ah, the forehead is paining." So what did the doctor do? The doctor took his finger, put some medication, put some bandage, and he said, "Go, you'll get cured." So, so again, he the problem was with the finger, but he was thinking that the whole body was paining. Just an example to illustrate, mind exaggerates, like this magnifying lens that we said. So again, a spiritual perspective of that, as we read from, we have to control the mind, and many ways to control the mind. In one way is that, don't fall into the trap when the mind is actually over exaggerating the current situation that is going on. So and also we all have extra time. Okay, this is the most important part of working from home. We do have extra time at our disposal. Okay, we're not driving through heavy traffic. Those of you who take the bus and go to work, you're not standing in the bus stop forever because you're working from home. Some of us go to beauty parlor, it's all closed, so we all have a lot of time. We're not taking car for servicing and sitting there for hours, nor waiting in the gas Costco petrol station, gas station forever when it is a little cheaper, but there's a long line. It's not the case. We all have a lot of extra time in our hands. This is Krishna given extra time for all of us, right? Think about it like, the time out. The time out, it is said, for those of you who watch sports, you have this hockey game, you have this basketball game. The coach suddenly says, time out, time out, time out. So they go and think through the strategy, and then they come back fresh, right? So even in a sports, like a cricket, there is lunch break, there is, tea break, etc., right? So this type of break that we have got, that additional time that we've got, probably we will never ever get it in our life again. Okay, so this is like a blessing in disguise for us. So let's make use of this. And Krishna says he is time, right? In Bhagavad Gita 10.30, 10.33, 11.32, Krishna says, "Time I am." And he again explains the same to Uddhava in the 11th canto, 16th chapter. Again, time I am. And also in the third canto, Kapila Muni is explaining to his mother Devahuti that Lord Vishnu is time. So Krishna himself is giving more of himself to us during this COVID time. So that's the spiritual perspective of us, because we are always running around as though we are behind, trying to do more and more with less and less, right? Everybody agrees we've been trying to do more and more with less and less. And now we have this Krishna given time, because Krishna's time, and it's our responsibility to make use of this and give it back to Krishna during these time. So there was a man who was given $86,400. Okay, so this man was given $86,400 by the bank, and the bank said, "I will deposit every day this 86,400, and in the night I will close this account. I will delete that amount." So um, every day you can make use of it. And if you had balance 30,000, 40,000 from this 86,400, bad luck. Next day you cannot add this to your next 86,400. And by the way, the most important thing, I will stop. The bank said that they will stop this 86,400 on any given day. This is not like lifelong. For the rest of his life, he's going to have this $86,400 dollars every day. So this person made use of every cent, every dollar of this 86,400 that was given to him. It's the same case with all of us. because we are given 86,400 seconds every day. So we're given 24 hours a day, and 86, that makes 24 hours a day is equal to 86,400. And we have to make use of every second that is given to us during this 24-hour period, because next day we cannot carry over anything. And anytime, like the bank said that they will stop this 86,400, anytime we may lose our life, especially during these troubling times. Anything can happen at any time. So let's make use of this 86,400 seconds that we have on a daily basis. And as we just heard, we're given much more opportunities because we are able to make use of this lot of time of this lot of seconds of this 86,400 because of less traffic, not no driving, no servicing, no beauty parlor, no standing in bus stop, etc., etc. So it's very important that we make use of the time, because you know, for those of you who follow cricket, depending on the country that you're coming from, Australia, India, New Zealand, etc., you've heard about 2020, right? So 2020 is the shortest form of cricket. It's done and dusted in about 2.5 hours. This IPL, famous IPL that you may have heard about, is also this 2020, 20 overs for one team, 20 overs for another team. So I heard one person saying the other day, while this year is 2020, but it goes like a test match. Test match is much longer, right? Some of them don't have patience to even watch that, forget about playing it if you're good enough. So, for devotees, that's not the case. Like we are making use of this greatest opportunity that we may not even get back in our life by making use of this extra time that we have. So that's the spiritual perspective of working from home. And I want to get into a little deeper, but we'll make it very simple. And I just wanted to make sure that if you have any comments or questions, you can type it in. And in the next, 15 minutes or so, we'll start looking at them and try to answer based on the topic that we are covering today, which is working from home, a spiritual perspective. So I just wanted to, use this, term, with these two terms, to use it as a bridge to where we want to go today. One is centrifugal and one is centripetal. Now, centrifugal, so I have a background in physics, so but many of you may have heard this as well. Centrifugal is the force that takes it outwards, okay? And centripetal is the forces that take you inside, okay? So centrifugal force is the one that draws our attention to the outer world, to this endless parade of material attractions, short-term gain, long-term pain, that type of thing. The good news is, because we are in this COVID-19 time, even if you simplify this, opportunities outside, it's reduced, because there's no movie theater, there's no restaurants, there is no live games where we spend 5-6 hours. So in that way, I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm just saying it drains our time. So even that is not there. So the centrifugal force, you can think of it like a Kali Yuga force. Okay, centrifugal force is Kali Yuga force that takes us away into this endless parade of material attractions. And the centripetal, last part of this is petal. It's like, sounds like like a lotus petal, petal. So the centripetal force is one that draws us inside, to who God is and understand God. So now you can even call it as Srila Prabhupada's force, centripetal force that draws us in. But for us to know more about Lord Krishna, that He is there as the super soul in our heart, Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sannivishto Mattasmati Jnanam Aponam, for us to know that, we need to go deeper into the scriptures, and we have this great opportunity. Again, it's like the preventive maintenance, not only like a timeout during a game. For those of you who work with big equipments, maybe in your company, it's called preventive maintenance, right? It's all the time the machine is on and on and on, and once in a while you have to switch it off to have that maintenance so that it can be running for a longer period of time. This is a forced preventive maintenance, which is great news for all of us. During this preventive maintenance of our body, that is a vehicle that is given by God, let's go deeper and study the scriptures. So with that, again, I just wanted to make sure that if you have any questions or comment based on what we are discussing today, please type it out in Facebook, and we will try to go through that in the next little while. But I would like to take this opportunity to introduce something from the Veda base, from Srila Prabhupada's teachings, as well as from the scriptures. And I'm going to read some of the terminology here. But again, nothing to worry. It's nothing new. All of you are aware of it. You're already doing that. Okay. So the topic is Pancha Mahayagya or Pancha Suna references. Okay. So one is in Bhagavad Gita 3.12 purport. Srila Prabhupada says, for ordinary men, at least 5 yagyas known as Pancha Mahayagya are necessary. And then he mentioned the same in Bhagavad Gita 3.8 to 13 in a class that he gave in New York, May 20th, 1966. And then in Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.14.19 in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, a family man has a responsibility to perform 5 kinds of sacrifices called Pancha Yajna in order to get relief from all kinds of unavoidable sinful reaction incurred in the course of his affairs. And then in 7.14.14, in the chapter titled Ideal Family Life, Narada Muni is instructing Yudhishthir Maharaj in the actual verse about this Pancha Mahayagya. In 9.16.23 purport, again Parshuram pastime, Srila Prabhupada explains this 5 kinds of recommended sacrifice is compulsory. Okay, it's not an option, it's compulsory for a householder. Goes on and on. I'm going to read 1 or 2 more and stop that. Srimad-Bhagavatam 10.69.24. So now this is a fascinating chapter because in the 69th chapter in the 10th canto, as we know that there are 12 cantos, and then in the 10th canto, it's all about Lord Krishna's appearance and all his pastimes. And there are 90 chapters. So the 69th chapter actually deals with Lord Krishna's pastimes in each one of the palaces in Dwaraka. So Narada Muni goes to one of the palaces, and Lord Krishna is actually performing this Pancha Yajna or Pancha Mahayagya. We'll get to that in a minute as to what it is. And then it goes on and on. And if you go to Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 22nd chapter, verse 141, in that particular purport, there are answers given as to what needs to be done. So again, I want to put the end part or last part of it here before we get into what is this Pancha Mahayagya. Okay, so there is a fascinating verse by Karabhajana Muni. He's one of the 9 Yogendras, right? So he's instructing Maharaj, one of the Maharaj, and in that he says, we are not indebted to anybody. Okay, Devarsi Bhutapta Nrinam Pitrinam Nakin Karo Nayam Rinicha Rajan Sarvatmanaya Sharanam Saranyam Gato Mukundam Pariritya Kritam. So we are not indebted to anybody, okay, to forefathers, to devatas, to saints and sages, etc., as if we are fully dedicated to Mukunda. Okay, that's one thing. And then another verse I would like to quote is Narada Muni is instructing Prachitas, Yatatarur Mula Nischanena Triptanti Tatskanda Bhujopaksa. In this particular verse, he's saying if we pour water to the root of the tree, the entire tree gets energized. If you put food through the mouth into the stomach, all the parts of the body are energized. We don't put water into the apple, we don't put food into the feet or to the fingers, we put through the mouth into the stomach. So similarly, if we fully dedicate ourselves to worshipping Lord Krishna, then we are not indebted to anybody. So it's important that we take into context these 2 verses before we get into it. Now the disclaimer is, how many of us can say that we are fully dedicated to Lord Mukunda? Okay, so then we don't need to do this. But if we are not, then as Prabhupada said in the verses that I quoted, it's mandatory for householders to do what is recommended. So before that, yajna means, for those of you who know, some of us get involved in this fire yajna. So it's not that we are going to find some quotes to tell you that you have to do fire yajna where you have to pour ghee, not only 1 yajna, 5 yajnas every day. No, that's not what we are trying to get to here. Yajna means sacrifice. And what does sacrifice mean? Sacrifice means giving up something that is near and dear to us for a higher cost. That's all is sacrifice. Giving up something like money, like time, for a higher cost. That is what is sacrifice. And there are many different sacrifices. In this Kali Yuga, we are supposed to do Sankirtanagya. Sankirtanagya means chanting. Not only chanting, but other forms of devotional services as well uh, 9 forms of devotional service, which is what we know, but it's much more than 9 forms of devotional service, because there are 64 forms of devotional service. 9 forms of devotional service is given to us by Prahlad Maharaj, which he heard when he was in the womb of his mother, Kayadu. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Mandaram, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. But the Sankirtan Yajna, which is recommended, is any of these forms of devotional service, but definitely minimum of 16 rounds. That is mandated, right? So we are supposed to follow the Sankirtan Yajna, and then we have this Agni Yajna too. But what is mentioned here is 5 types of deaths or 5 types of sacrifices needed, because one is we are incurring some sinful deeds unknowingly or inadvertently. When we are walking, we are crushing some ants and other micro organism. When we are vacuuming, right, we are using this big vacuum, many of the living entities are getting killed. Same thing when we are driving the car, right? Yes, we do less driving nowadays because of this COVID-19. There's less accidents as well, which is a good thing. But sometimes a squirrel gets killed. When the tires are going on, when we are driving, it crushes many things. And when we are driving in the windshield, you see many of these insects, flying insects, get hit, and all that is left is blood stain there. And what we do callously, we put windshield washer fluid and get rid of that, right? So inadvertently, that little insect's mother is waiting, father is waiting, kids are waiting, etc. When you think about it, right? So inadvertently, when we are taking bath, when we are eating, when we are drinking, some of the organisms are getting killed. So one is to expiate the sins that we may do inadvertently, and the second thing is we are indebted to our creditors. So we are indebted to our creditors. And who are the creditors? So it is explained that there are 5. One is Lord Krishna and his servants. Just imagine this beautiful body, or any body that all of us have, right? I mean, it is said that the eyes are the most, best camera that you can ever think of. When we buy a iPhone or whatever camera, there's camera. But it is said that when we are young, the eyesight is so great that it's none of the camera can ever match. The digestive system, the blood is there. We have blood, so much blood, but it's not just when we are walking, it's just pouring away everywhere. When we eat, it's just not going anywhere. Beautiful system is established in this body. When we buy a car, we pay lease. When we buy a house, we pay the mortgage. We have this body that we are using every day to work, to earn, to do spiritual activity. What are we doing in return? So we are indebted to God for this and many other things. But if you think about it, the sunlight, yeah, I can see the sun out now. It keeps us warm, it keeps us alive. If earth was a little further away, we are frozen to death. If earth was a little closer, we are burned to death. We have this sunlight, and we are the warmth and the moonlight. Because of that, we have the vegetables growing, and we are able to survive. So all these, the oxygen, we don't even see that there is oxygen, but we are surviving because of that. So this and many more we always owe to the Lord. So how can we offset? What is the yajna that we need to do on a daily basis? What is the sacrifice? So what is recommended is offer worship to the Lord, chant, perform devotional services. That easy, which we need to do every day. So as I said, nothing new, and we are just dovetailing into the spiritual perspective of working from home by bringing in these aspects that are described in Srimad-Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita that is quoted today, and why we are doing what we are doing, and how we can do more of what we are supposed to do. So on a daily basis, we need to do this to God and to his servants, sunlight, moonlight, etc. So we already heard Yatataror Mula Nishchanena. If we worship Lord and with the mindset that everything is within the Lord, then we don't have to worry about it. The second is we have to offer our worship to the rishis. Just imagine, these beautiful scriptures that are given by Vyasadeva, the 17th incarnation of the Lord. So it's God himself is giving, Krishna himself is telling us what to do through these scriptures. It's not written by somebody, it's by Krishna. But just imagine if Srila Prabhupada was not there and he did not bring this, scriptures to the West, none of us will be sitting in front of this laptop or computer and hearing the messages from the scriptures. So we are eternally indebted to the saints and sages and Srila Prabhupada. So how can we offset that debt? How can we liquidate that debt? Is by reading the scripture, is by internalizing that. So these scriptures are not for meant for somebody, for us to tell somebody that this is in the scripture. This the content of the scriptures are for each one of us to internalize, to learn from it. If you're angry, let's learn from it and be less angry or not getting angry. So this is there for our improvement. So that's the scriptures, and we can offset that, liquidate the debt by reading the scriptures and internalizing it. But most important is, before we read, especially from the spiritual perspective when we are working from home, let's have faith. Okay, so we have a few more minutes that we'll wrap it up, and then we'll open up for some questions. We need to have faith. Faith is the foundation of our spiritual life. For those of you who've been to Dubai, Burj Khalifa, about 830 meters, right? For it to be standing tall and strong, just imagine how deep the foundation is. So, we may be in ISKCON Krishna consciousness for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, but if our faith is not there, our foundation not there, anytime it can collapse, right? So important, faith in the scriptures, faith in the contents of the scriptures, that's the foundation. Faith is the magnet that attracts the mercy of the Lord. Faith is the key that opens the door to the spiritual world. Faith is like Wi-Fi. I was just thinking about it. Faith is like Wi-Fi. You can't see it. Faith is something, it's not tangible, it's not measurable, you can't see it. Just like Wi-Fi. Can we see Wi-Fi? But it helps us to connect. So similarly, it helps us to connect to God. And I also travel a lot for my work, right? So, I take pesos when you go to Mexico. You take bahts when you go to Thailand, Singapore dollars, etc. So the medium of exchange, that's the medium of exchange. But the medium of exchange with God is faith. Okay, so let's stir the faith. Let's activate. Let's ignite the faith that we have in God. And on that topic of faith, I would just like to mention one verse, 4.40. Okay, Krishna is very strong when he says that. Lord Krishna, he says, Agnyashasrata danascha samshayatma vinashyati. So he says, if one who's got no faith in the scriptures, I'm paraphrasing, one who's got no faith in the scriptures, he will fall down, and there is no happiness for him in this life or in the next life. So we need to have faith in the scriptures. And on this topic of faith, and on making this yajna or sacrifice to please Srila Prabhupada and to please Vyasadev, there is so much of hidden gems when we are working from home. The scriptural or spiritual perspective is that Krishna in the second chapter, he explains to us that we are not the body, we are the soul, right? So this shows that the body maybe is prone to virus, but the soul is a virus proof, right? So with that in mind, if anything happens, okay, this is not the end of it, right? And Narasimhadev prayers are there. Narasimhadev passed him in the 7th canto, but if you go to 5th canto, fascinating prayers on Lord Narasimhadev that gives us this confidence when we are working from home, the spiritual perspective that we will be safe. We follow the precautions that is given to us, but we will be safe when we know the thunderbolt like teeth, thunderbolt like nails of Lord Narasimhadev. Dhanvantari is another wonderful 12th incarnation of the Lord, where he appears in the 8th canto. He brings this pot of nectar, if you remember. In the 1st canto, it says, just by remembering the name of Dhanvantari, we are relieved of diseases. So let's have that confidence, right? And yesterday I was watching Facebook, His Holiness Bhakti Marga Swami was performing lively, wonderful kirtan and bhajan in the temple, in ISKCON Toronto temple. And he was singing Bhajahure Mana Sri Nandanandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare. So again, we take confidence. If you worship the lotus feet of the Lord, it makes you fearless, right? Especially when we are working from home during this COVID times, we are all fearful of many things, right? And one other way we can also, one of the ways that we can also, during this times when we can read Narayana Kawacha from the 6th canto of the 8th chapter, where 88 expansions of the Lord, we ask 88 expansions, manifestations, opulences, representations, energies of the Lord, protection. This is the best time to read those, 23 verses from 6, 8, I think from verse 13 onwards, right? So this is there for our benefit. So let's excavate them and make use of these wonderful prayers that are there, right? We have Rudra Gita. This Rudra Gita is glorifying Lord Krishna. It's not glorifying anyone else. It's narrated by Lord Shiva to Prachitas, who are 10 in number, sons of Prajnapari, right? So these are hidden gems that are there in Srimad-Bhagavatam for our benefit. So during this COVID time. So that is from the scriptures. So the first is, the Yajna, the debts that we owe to God and how we can do sacrifice to offset that. We read that, we heard that. Second is to the rishis, we are hearing that. Third is to to our fathers and forefathers, right? So we are nobody. If there was if our parents were not there, we are not there. If our parents were not there, our parents are not there, therefore we are not there. So instead of me explaining, I would just say, if you can read some of the verses from 10th canto 45th chapter. Okay, this is the chapter where Lord Krishna goes to Prabhasa ocean, and then he gets the Panchajanya conch, and then he goes to Samyamani, the Yamaraja's kingdom, and he retrieves Sandipani Muni's dead son. But before this pastime, he explains how we are unable to repay the debts to our parents because the body that we have will eventually help us to go back home, back to Godhead as well. So, and the same sentiment is again reiterated by Puru, who's the fifth son of Yayati. Again, we cannot repay to our parents. So, during this time, during this COVID time, when we're working from home, let's call our parents and find out how they are doing, get their blessings when they are alive, right? This is the greatest thing that we can do. Who would have thought that the best way to love our parents is not to visit them? Never ever, right? We never thought that the best way to love our parents is to keep away from them. That's the nature of this COVID-19. So we're all working from home. They are there in their home. Take the phone, talk to them, and this is authorized by Lord Krishna himself in this 45th chapter of the 10th canto. The fourth type of debts that we owe is for other human beings, right? Just imagine, I just read, when you take the train, there's a special train that will take you from Toronto to Vancouver, okay? The most scenic route. We pay $1,000, $2,000. We're not doing justifying the entire thing, because I also read this beautiful scenery that you have is built in such a way um, by many people for many years. And they said for every 1 mile from Toronto to Vancouver, for those of you who know, even if you take a flight, it takes 4 or 5 hours or more. Just imagine going in the train, it takes few days. For every 1 mile, there was one loss of life. So we can never repay. We can comfortably go there. Same thing with Highway 401 or any road. How many people would have got injured, lost life, to have a plate of prasadam. Just imagine, there is a farmer, then there is a person who packages that, then there is a driver who brings it, then you have manufacture, then you have stores like Walmart selling, there is a cashier there is a person. It's just unlimited. So we're always integrated with all human beings. So we are supposed to be taking care of, we are supposed to be grateful for other human beings as well. So this is not like a humanitarian gesture, but it's a culmination of our spiritual activity. So the best way to understand this is Rantideva pastime, who personified this Manusha Yajna, right? So the sacrifice that we need to other humans. So how can we do that during this time when we are working from home? The spiritual perspective is that if we have to go shopping, we do go shopping to buy some grocery. Let's not clean up the entire grocery store and save it in our house. We don't do that, right? So whatever we can help others there, and you know get our mind out of this I, me, myself attitude, right? So that's how we can help. You can make cook prasadam, give it to your neighbor, the elderly neighbor. So we can do that. That's manusha yajna, sacrifice to other human beings. And the last one is bhuta yajna. Bhuta yajna is, we are always indebted to the environment, to the elements, to other living entities like trees and bacteria. There are good bacteria, right? Trees as well. Trees gives us oxygen. Trees gives us shade. Food like fruits. It also prevents soil erosion. So when we think about it, right, we are always indebted to others. So how can we do that? We take care of tulasi, right? That's the best way. And save electricity, recycle. Not use too much plastics, or recycle. Use the recycle plates, etc. Okay, so with that, I just wanted to summarize what we just talked about. So if you have any questions, you can submit it to us, and we'll we will try to answer them. So just to summarize what we covered so far, so again, we are in this unprecedented time, where the entire globe is impacted. Almost 8 billion people are impacted by what we are going through right now, and we have this extra time in our hands where we want to make use of this Krishna's time. He says three times in Bhagavad Gita, at least twice in Srimad-Bhagavatam. So let's make use of this downtime that we have, which is like a time out for us to strategize it and go into the spiritual perspective of one thing is definitely control the mind, in the sense understand that the mind exaggerates, and also understand it gravitates towards something that is only negative, and also understand we have to understand that nothing in this world is permanent. The only thing that is constant is the change. And also we know that mind always think of this again lens, right? So it sort of exaggerates everything, and we do have extra time. Let's make use of the time that we have. Centrifugal force is the attraction that attracts us to this endless parade of material glitters that are outside. But centripetal force is like Srila Prabhupada force that takes us inside. And then we also heard from Srila Prabhupada's quotes about this Pancha Mahayagya, which is nothing but sacrifice, means giving up something that is near and dear to us. We don't need to do that, but we voluntarily give up something, especially the time and money, which is near and dear to us, for others. And who are the others? And why do we need to do the sacrifice? Because of our driving, walking, breathing, etc. There are some living entities who are dead, and similarly we have to liquidate our debts to five creditors: God, Krishna, and his servants. Second, that is Deva Yagya. Second is Rishi Yagya, for all the wonderful scriptures that we have. This is like the manual for life that we have, like a owner's manual for our body. It's all given what is do's and what is don'ts. And the third is the sacrifice that we do for our parents and ancestors. If they are dead, if they're gone, we do the Shraddh ceremony, right? So we hear from the scriptures how Narsimhadev is instructing Prahlad Maharaj to do the Shraddh ceremony for Hiranyakashipu, even though he got liberated because he was directly killed by Lord Narsimhadev. And we also hear how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did this Shraddh ceremony for his father in Gaya. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, before his marriage, did this Nandimukha ceremony, that is again offering to the forefathers before his marriage to Vishnupriya. And we also hear how Advaita Acharya did this Shraddh ceremony to his father. And Govinda Ghosh is one of our Acharya, is a counterpart of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He did this wonderful Shraddh ceremony as well. And Narada Muni is explaining twice in the 7th canto to perform this. But again, we also heard, Samashritaya Pada. We also heard another verse where it says, we are not indebted to anybody. This Karabhajana Muni's instruction, Devarsi Bhutaptananam Pitrinam. So we don't need to do, as long as we are fully dedicated to Lord Krishna. If we are not, then let's do this, especially when we are staying home. So the fourth one is Manusha Yajna, or sacrifice for other living entities, and we can do that by not collecting everything for ourselves when we go to buy groceries during these times. Help our neighbors by giving prasad. And the last one is Bhuta sacrifice, Bhuta Runa or Rina that we have, and then the corresponding sacrifice. Let's take care of Tulasi. If somebody is having this cow farm, let's do what we can do, etc. So that's a summary of this class that we did online, working from home, a spiritual perspective. And I would like to see if there are any questions that are here, so that we can try to answer. So there is a question. So how can we explore the 86,400 seconds in guiding towards positive thinking while we are not in a disciplined environment? Should we make daily routines? The mind is wandering because of the influence of media. Please give us some concrete examples on how to keep the mind engaged. So wonderful question. So again, if we don't have a routine, so that's why Srila Prabhupada established this schedule in our temples as well, right? So we have this Mangalarti at the scheduled time, then we have the morning program, we have the Srimad-Bhagavatam classes, and then Tulasi Arati. So just like that, if we don't have a routine like we do have at our work, we go to our work, from this time to that time, and we have different engagements during the day. Similarly, if we don't have a routine similar to what we do at work, we will not be able to make use of this extra time that we have when we are working from home. So definitely, we have this 86,400 seconds every day, which is 24 hours, but we need to dedicate all the extra time that we have into going deep into these scriptures that we have with faith, and then think of these five different debtors, creditors that are there, so that we are able to offset that. So again, is the greatest benefit and privilege that we have is this extra time. So let's make use of this daily routine. The mind will wander, of course the mind will wander, and as we just heard, let's make sure that this mind is not dictating things on us, right? So mind will exaggerate. So the most important thing, so remember again, I'm going to show this again. So it's like this lens, it'll exaggerate the situation. Oh, the job is going to go, everybody's going to be jobless, so just bring our mind back to the scriptures and the strength that we can draw from the scriptures. As we said, all these wonderful pastimes are there. Krishna did the most impossible thing, right? Lifting the Govardhan hill. When you think about it, it was impossible for everyone else, just like it's impossible for all of us, even for the greatest doctors to come up with a cure right now. So that was the situation in all the pastimes of Lord Krishna, how he's swallowing the forest fire not once, twice. Then the Trinavarta, Shakatashura, all these. So coming back to this Govardhan Leela, it's most impossible thing. Pillars of rain is falling. So whatever is impossible for us, it's so easy for Lord Krishna, right? So with that confidence, so this even this COVID-19 will be nothing for Lord Krishna. So just we have to have that faith in Lord's timing, okay, not in our timing, not when we want, faith in Lord's timing. So how he's able to hold it like a little mushroom for 7 days and 7 nights, most impossible thing is very easily possible for Lord Krishna. So hopefully that answered the question. To have this disciplined environment, and we keep the routine of what we do from morning to evening, but majority of the time that we have, even when we are in a conference or something where we don't need to be hearing every minute, there is so much of pastimes, classes that are given through ISKCON Desire Tree and many other sources as well. So we can go deep into all these, memorize some of the verses. We are able to memorize some of the bhajans, learn some of the bhajans, etc. So we can make use of that. Um, so there is one other question as well. Um, um, isn't Rantidev's pastime contradictory to King Ambarish's pastime? Um, so when we think about it, Rantidev's pastime is actually not contradictory, it's complementary. So when we see this Rantidev's pastime, for those of you who are interested in this or who you already know, this is from Canto 9, chapter 21. So 9:21 is this wonderful pastime of Rantideva. Rantideva is actually fulfilling the fourth and the fifth sort of debts that we owe to Manisha, to other human beings, and to um, to other living entities, right? He's just following 5.18, Bhagavad Gita 5.18. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmani Gaviyastini Sunicheva Swapakecha Pandita Samadarshina. So he's looking at everyone with equal vision, okay? So it is not contradictory, it's complementary, because he's looking at the heart of everyone and he's looking at Krishna everyone. So it's not humanitarian deed that Rantideva did, but is the culmination of his devotional service that ended in what he's doing. Because in the end, we know, like he had little bit of food after 48 days of fasting, and then 1/3 he gave it to a Brahmin, uninvited guest. And then second one was a Sudra who came. The second part of it he gave it to him. And the third was a man with a dog, and he gave the remaining food after 48 days of fasting. Just imagine that, right? And then what happened? He just had one glass of water remaining. And when he was about to drink, a Chandala comes. A Chandala is somebody who is lower than a dog eater, it says in Srimad-Bhagavatam. And what does he do? And when he was about to drink, he comes and begs, he gives it to him. And then it was all a test. All the devatas said, okay, I came as a Brahmin, I came up as the dog and the owner, I came as the Sudra, I came as a Chandala. He passed the test. What did he do? He did not ask any favor from the devata. So he just went into the meditation of Lord Vishnu. So at the Ambarish Maharaj pastime, where he did everything, he just in a way atma nivedanam, right? He was able to give everything up what he had. He was using all his senses as well. All of us do follow a little bit of that, so with our eyes we look at the deities, with our legs we walk to the temple, etc. We do that, but he was doing all the time, right? So in a way, when you think about it, both were doing devotional service, and from Rantidava's perspective, 9.21 is the culmination of devotional activities that ended in what he did, because he was seeing the super soul in the heart of in the heart of the dogs, in the heart of a Sudra, in the heart of a Chandala, and in the heart of a Brahmana. We'll take one or two more questions. Can you please provide some? It's somewhat similar to the current situation where we learn from the where we learn. So as I mentioned, specifically when we have to think about it, any of the pastimes that we can think of, it's not like one-to-one, there were some virus or something like that in the scripture, at least from Srimad Bhagavatam. But the fact is, when we think of an impossible situation, so right now it seemed to be an impossible situation because there seemed to be no cure. Okay, at least now we are hearing, there can be some antibody testing, etc., etc. But we know right now there is no slam dunk cure. So it's an impossible situation. So we are all helpless. So that's what we read from the scriptures, the helpless situation of everybody in the scripture. So helplessness in this Govardhan Leela, in the forest fire, in any of Lord Krishna's pastime, even when Nanda Maharaj was swallowed by this python, helpless situation. And he said, I am surrendering. And then things change. So the main thing from our standpoint is, do what you can and God will do what we cannot. So if you're conscious of God, we follow the rules and regulations of what the government is giving, is instructing us, social distancing, whatever we need to, because Krishna has given us intelligence, right? We can't say, no, I'm not going to follow everything. No, Krishna has given us intelligence. He says in Bhagavad Gita, is the intelligence of the intelligent. So intelligence is given to us, so we follow the authorities, what we need to do, but we go deeper into the scriptures and look for the spiritual perspective, and especially when we have more time, when we are working from home. So similar situations, there are many similar situations of helplessness in the scriptures that we can get confidence from. So I think those are the questions that we had, and we are a few minutes over time. So I would take this opportunity. Again, we are going to continue, so please continue to be tuned in, joining us every Sunday at the same time, and there'll be wonderful topics that will be covered every Sunday. And we would like to sincerely thank each one of you. And again, I would like to close by saying, we express our heartfelt concern and prayers to everybody who's affected by this COVID. Follow the authorities' instructions, but make use of this extra time that each one of us have been given by going deeper into the scriptures. And when we are working from home, this is the greatest benefit that we can. It's a blessing in disguise for us. We will never, ever get time like this, additional time like this. So please make use of this $86,400/seconds that is given to us to spiritually progress. And this is the greatest opportunity for us to go deeper, and eventually this may be the springboard that will take us to Goloka Vrindavan. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.